Jeremy.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah.
Doing good.
Very spiffy. Good luck.
Mr. Jeremy is dressed to the nines and tens, folks. My God. He looks like he's coming from a katana. Nice to meet you, brother. Come have a seat up here.
Style. We need to class it up here a bit, right?
So let's welcome Jeremy Saltan from the Yamina Party. Yamina Party is another, it's the bigger right-wing party that's led by Naftali Bennett. And you are number 18 on the list. But you're also an Olet yourself.
I am, yes.
So where are you from, brother?
I'm from Chicago.
Chicago in the house. And how come is Manatapo?
Well, I made Aliyah, as we like to call it, in 1995. So that was now 25 years ago.
Wow.
Right, I still know how to count. Right, my math's
Are
okay.
you past the age of 30 or you came as a kid?
Well, yes. I'm 35 years old, so I came at the age of 11, 11 and a half.
So you came with your family?
I came with my family.
And is your
I did not
family
go
still
as
here?
an 11-year-old on a plane.
Well, Nefesh B'Nefesh gets them younger and younger, you know?
Well, I know that now we have Nefesh B'Nefesh, but when I made Aliyah, actually there was no Nefesh B'Nefesh.
So you did it.
There was such a
That was
thing
the
as-
old days where you took 3-mile walks to school in the rain and the snow.
And it was uphill both ways.
And you had to take the ship
Both
to
ways.
Israel because there was no airlines. You
Well,
know?
we did bring our stuff on a ship. I mean, we did take the airplane. I don't know if people still do that. They called it a lift.
Yeah.
You put all of your stuff
Yeah,
on the
I
boat.
did a lift. I
also.
did a lift.
And then,
Yeah.
and then the boat shows up like a month later. I don't really remember.
And then
why
you have to pay all the money at the port.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's true. You find
Yeah.
out there's extra fees.
So,
on it.
okay, so let's talk about you, Mr. Jeremy. Jeremy
Sure.
is a very interesting person because he writes for a few papers and he covers the Knesset, and you have a blog covering the Knesset, correct?
I mean, KnessetJeremy.com. Covered the Knesset for many years. Right now we deal with polls mostly, poll tracking. I also put out a polling average, poll
So
predictor.
what does the poll say that Yamina is doing if
Right,
the election's held today?
2 minutes before I walked in, the latest poll came out by Direct Politics. They have us at 8 seats in the last poll that just came out, literally less than 5 minutes.
So you got your work cut out, buddy, because you're number 18.
You
So
know-
let's see what we could do to get you up to 18 by our audience. Okay, so
we need
let's
all
convince them.
40,000 all 40,000
Exactly.
people,
Okay.
and all of their friends, and all of their friends.
So
friends,
let's
friends.
talk about this.
Sure.
Are Olim important to Yamina?
Of course they are. Of course, it's not even a question. I mean, Naftali Bennett himself, he's the son of immigrants. For those of you who don't know, his parents, they were born and raised in California. And he himself has spent significant time in the States. Even after he left the Army, he spent time during part of his high-tech career in New York. Of course, there are a lot of other people on the list who have spent time here and there within the States. Matan Kahanu is number 5. At 3 months old, he did this with his family again, not, by himself.
Not on his own. Nefesh B'Nefesh didn't send him diapers with Nefesh B'Nefesh.
He went to New York and spent
Okay.
time as a kid over there as well. So definitely we have a lot of people who've spent time overseas, of course, also within the United States as well. But also there are other countries out there.
Okay.
Rabbi Eli Ben Dahan, who's number 15 on the list, he immigrated from Morocco. There are people who come from all over the
So let's talk about your
planet.
party for a little bit.
Sure.
Your policies and let us Olim get to know who Yamina is. Okay, I can't pronounce this. I'm trying my best to say Yamina. I keep saying your mama.
Okay.
It's a very hard. It's a very hard. I'm
so
slow.
I'll make it easier for you. Is it easier to say Yamin? Right?
No,
Yamin,
that's the name of the party,
No,
Yamina.
no, I know,
But I'm
then
just
you just
saying.
add on the
Okay.
Yamina.
So all right. So
Yeah.
Yamina is a right wing party,
Mhm.
more to the right of Bibi or
Correct,
Likud.
yes.
So what do you think of the $1 million Trump peace plan?
I like the carrots. I don't like the sticks.
What's wrong with the stick and what's good about the carrots?
Well, the good thing about the carrots is that, I mean, who doesn't like carrots, right? I mean, from Bugs Bunny onwards, it's always been a big thing. Look, this stuff when we're looking at being able to apply Israeli sovereignty to all of the Israeli settlements, if we're talking about also 30% of Judea and Samaria itself, of course, all of that is part of Area C. It's actually very much similar to the plan that Bennett put out 8 years ago within that plan. Of course, he asked to bring 60% of Judea and Samaria. Here it's only 30%, but it's a good start.
And what would
it's
you do
something
with the
that
Arabs
puts us,
that live there?
Well, the Trump plan obviously has an idea of what it thinks should
Right,
happen. But if
like,
you want to
okay,
ask
so
about
b-
if
so
you want to ask
BB
about the Bennett plan,
yeah.
the Bennett plan that came out 8 years ago has its own idea of what should happen when it comes to final status. But the first step is, of course, being able to apply Israeli sovereignty on the areas where 100% of the Jews are living, which is where the settlements are.
Okay.
So that's carrots and that's good stuff. When it comes to the sticks, I think most people don't like sticks, right? No one likes getting hit by a stick. It's not something that's so pleasant. There's things in that plan that are not so good. And if you want, you can look at the macro side of it. You can look at the micro
Now,
side of
Bibi
it.
said today that he will not move, or the Arabs that live in the Triangle in the Galilee, that they're going to stay Israeli, and he rejects that part of the plan. Does Yamina reject that part of the plan too? Or?
Yes, it's very simple. Look, to go ahead and strip Israeli citizens from their citizenship does not sound like the model of democracy that I believe in, or I think a majority of common sense people do believe. I understand that's a part of the plan that was pushed by Lieberman. I think one of the interesting things about the Trump plan is it took a little bit from each plan, right? The Trump plan took a little bit from the Bennett plan, took a little bit from the Lieberman plan, took a little bit from the various things we've seen in speeches that Netanyahu has floated. So it was the Lieberman plan actually to go ahead and take the areas of what's called the Triangle and the Wadi Ara Valley, which are, again, areas of 100% non-Jewish populations, whether it's Christian, Muslim, or otherwise, and transfer them to a future Palestinian state. But to go ahead and do so, that means to go ahead and to make them give up their citizenship,
Okay.
and that's something that we're against.
So here's a question from Jeremy Kutner.
Okay.
What are you going to do about, he says, there's 500,000 Israelis that are denied the basic right of civil marriage, of marrying in their country of Israel. So a lot of these are affecting a lot of Olim, because they're very upset that they have to, most of the 500,000 are Olim, mostly from Russia and Central America, as well as a lot from America too. So
the Yamina list is a collection of a number of parties. The party that I'm a part of, Yamina Chadash, has a different answer to that question than, for instance, some of the other parties and some of the other politicians.
So what's your answer?
That would
What's
go
Jeremy's
ahead.
answer?
Well, I'm saying I'd love to give Jeremy's answer, and I'd also love to give my own party's answer. But the honest thing to say is, because we're running as part of the Yamina Alliance, what the position is here that we're going to be running on a list. And when it comes to this and a lot of religion and state issues, we're going to have freedom of conscience. That means whatever questions such as this, which another Jeremy is asking, that's going to be decided for each MK by themselves. There's not going to be what we know as party discipline. So when you're asking all these other
that's
questions of
something
what
different.
the,
So
right,
each person votes their choice.
So each person votes
Okay.
their choice.
So here's another question.
Yes.
Thank you, Jeremy, for that question. Brian writes, why didn't Yamina condemn the racist attacks by the chief rabbi against Olim? And I guess what he means by against Olim was the Russian Olim, like a lot of them, because a lot of them are not halakhically Jewish. So I guess that's what Brian means.
Many members of the list went ahead and spoke to that event. They didn't go ahead and say that they are outright condemning him, but they definitely asked him to take his words back. They asked him to also choose his words differently and better in the future. To go ahead and to take a person who's in a very high position within the government as a chief rabbi and to go ahead and say things that are insensitive to a lot of people is something that a majority of Israelis don't want to see. It has nothing to do with my party or any other party. There were unfortunate statements, and my party responded to it. Why did we not condemn it? We don't go around condemning every single time a government bureaucrat goes ahead and says something they shouldn't say. If we were to go ahead and do that, then wow, there would be no end to it. I know there are a lot of people that did condemn that specific instance, but I'd ask why they're not going ahead and condemning other government employees who've said other things that are very harmful. I'll tell you from a lot of friends I know in terms of their experiencing Yisrael Pnim in the Interior Ministry, there are a lot of bureaucrats there that basically, I hear the stories there, those people should be condemned, based on the way that they've treated a lot of Olim.
So if
I'm
you
saying the idea to go ahead and pick and choose who you're going to condemn,
if Yemina gets in,
not
what ministries would Yemina like?
Well, as you know right now,
Well, besides all the
minister,
ministries, or
well, yeah, of course, who doesn't want all the ministries? But that's never happened, and I would be very surprised if we see that happen now. Right now, the defense minister is Naftali Bennett. He would like to keep that position. It's a pretty important position to be able to make sure that my children and everyone's children are safe. It's a very important one. We know that Ayelet Shaked would like to go back to the Justice Ministry, where she's done a lot to be able to change things, to make it more equal and even compared to where things been since the constitutional revolution of Aharon Barak in 1992. Right now, Betzalel Smotrich is the transportation minister. He'd like to stay there. And Rafi Peretz is the education minister, and he'd like to stay there. If we get a fifth ministry, which again would be great.
So give me the fifth
but let's be honest, I
ministry
just
of
told
choice.
you the latest poll has us at 8 seats. I don't see that happening. Various things that have been talked about in the past has been what they call smaller. They call it smaller because of budgets, but there has been talk, whether it's immigration absorption, diaspora, those type of issues, which I'm sure talk a lot to a lot of viewers, but also in general immigrants.
okay. So let's go to some questions about.
Fernando is not happy about his question not being answered
Okay.
previously about
answer
the
was that?
housing crisis and the high cost
Oh,
of
so
living.
Well, that wasn't to me.
That wasn't to him.
No,
Okay.
so are you
me.
willing to answer now?
So okay, so let's rephrase the question. Among Olim, it's very hard because, well, maybe you remember if your parents, because you were a kid back then. But when Olim come here to rent apartments or to buy, well, let's just talk about renting. You need guarantors,
Correct.
and they don't let your family abroad guarantee your apartment.
Yeah.
They don't have friends or family here. They read contracts that are in Hebrew, don't understand, and then the housing. Now we used to have, maybe when your parents came here 25 years ago, we had our Merkaz Klita,
Yes.
and today there's very few. They closed most of the Merkaz Klitas. They're
Yeah.
only for a few. Olim from poorer countries, let's say third world countries, or problematic Olim that need a little guidance, and basically they closed most of the Merkaz Klita. And for most of the Olim from the West, for instance, that's not even an option for them. If you're an Olim past the age of 30, that's not an option for you. And Lord knows I've passed the age of 30.
Oh, you
know,
look like a young guy.
Thank you. I remember,
Yeah.
I was around here many years ago,
Okay.
I was a waiter at Jesus' Last Supper.
Wow.
Wow, I remember
That was
because
a while
he
ago.
returned his
You look
food
pretty
4
good for a
times.
2,000-year-old
He
man, I'll be
returned the
honest.
food 4
Yes.
times. It was too salty, it was too cold. Anyone that doubts that he was Jewish, all I had to do was wait on the poor guy. So I'm
Wow.
joking.
Was he into pig? It's just something I was wondering.
No, it was kosher.
It was kosher back
It was
then.
kosher back then. Yeah.
Okay. It's
There
interesting.
it was totally kosher. They had a hechsher
Yeah.
and everything.
It's amazing
It was
how things have
Manhattan.
changed. Yeah.
It was kosher
It was
Manhattan.
Mahadran, wow.
Mahadran, yeah.
That's the
So
best
all
one.
right, so let's
I'm
talk
happy
about
to-
this.
I'm happy to answer that. I'm actually in a unique place to answer it because I can answer both parts of the question. One of the positions that I hold with the municipal government, I sit on the Planning and Building Committee that's called Harel, which is a regional planning and building committee in which we're in charge of planning and also building the various municipalities of Mevaseret Zion, where I live, Abu Ghosh, which is a non-Jewish town, and Telstone, Kiryat Yarim, which is an ultra-Orthodox. It's a Haredi area. So I deal with people coming with a lot of problems from all different segments of Israeli society. And on the other side of that, within the Mevaseret Zion city government, so I'm the deputy chairman of the Immigration Absorption Committee within Mevaseret Zion. And you're talking about absorption
They
centers.
closed down too.
So I was one of the people fighting against that. We were able to delay it for many years. For people who don't know, a lot of you might have gone through there. Mevaseret Zion Absorption Center was the largest. It was the flagship of all absorption centers of the Jewish Agency. 1,300 spots. That's a lot. There were a lot of Olim that their introduction in Israeli society was to go ahead and come through us. So when I'm talking about housing, I'm talking both from the macro perspective of just in general, planning entire neighborhoods, down to being able to approve someone who wants to put a pool in his lawn if he's able to have enough money to do so, down to the level of Olim dealing with absorption center and the very hard thing of getting out of the absorption center. And as you mentioned, unfortunately, the policy that we've seen, there was by Sofa Landwehr, who's no longer in government, was to close them. I actually have back from my early parliamentary work a parliamentary question from 2010 in which I asked her, specifically a number of issues when it came to immigration absorption, and she said already then that it was her policy to close down. She wanted to pretty much privatize Aliyah. For again, someone who came before, Nefesh B'Nefesh, and before we saw a lot of these private companies come forth and do a lot of good work that they're doing, I was very alarmed to see the stuff that she was doing. Then I saw it happen in my own hometown of Mevaseret. And what scares me about this, and I talked about this in a Knesset committee of immigration absorption, because they were closing it right at the time that you had the problem with France and Ukraine, which you had a lot of Jews coming here. I said, if you close the absorption centers, what you're saying is immigration, Aliyah, is only open to rich people. And if we don't have room for you, there's going to be a line. And the way that I understand Chok HaShvut, the law of return, which is one of the most important laws that the Israeli state ever legislated, which says if you're a Jew, wherever you are, again, it's enough to have a grandparent anywhere.
So you disagree
you can come here.
You disagree with
So,
Otzma.
I disagree with Otzma on a lot of things, but to answer, this particular question, what you have here is a situation which they try to go ahead and create a line to make Aliyah, which I think is just a violation of one of the most fundamental pillars of what it is that we believe here in the state of Israel, and that's that Jews should be able to make Aliyah and not wait until there's a spot in an absorption center because there's a person in government who wants to go ahead and sell it to make some money, whether it's for the pension group or just for the Jewish Agency or wherever else. So that being said, what I found is that on the macro level, and I know this is cliche, but the more we're able to build, the lower the prices go. And the problem that we have with the monopoly of the land authority, in which you're not able to actually bring down prices, since the price of land is usually at least 50%, depending, of course, where you live, but usually about 50% if you're talking about the central areas of what the actual price is. If you're going to keep that monopoly and you're not going to break that up, it's going to be very difficult to go ahead and bring down the cost to be able to buy a house. In terms of the other half of that cost, what you can do, this is something Naftali Bennett did do when he was economy minister from 2013 to 2015, is to take the small little components and try to combat each one separately. One of the things was cement. There was a cement monopoly. You had one cement company. You could only buy cement in industrial sizes, and if you needed just a little bit more to finish your house or do some work in your house, you weren't able to go ahead and do that. So again, what he was able to do is break that up. That's just one component.
Okay.
There's a lot of other components.
So
now, if you're talking about rent, which I think speaks to a lot of other people, are saying just like for the next few years, right? They're saying, Jeremy, that's great, but for the next 10 years, I'm not going to be able to put down any down payment for a mortgage. What can I do in terms of rent? So there are various interesting programs which have been discussed over the years at the government level, both the national government and the local government. The problem is that if we don't have a government like we have right now, you're not able to go ahead and do a lot. One of the ones that I really liked that we had a few years ago was to penalize people that took residential areas and used them for commercial use, such as, I'm sure you've seen this a lot, dentists, lawyers, people who are just saying they don't want to pay the extra tax, and it's a much higher tax for business. They don't want to pay the commercial tax, so they rent out residential areas, and then they drive up the prices. So what we did is we went ahead and we put in place a lot of both monitoring methods, but also a lot of fines and punishment to be put in there to stop people from doing that. There was another group of people, which are people that are here 2 weeks out of the year. They're here maybe a week, 2 weeks, and they have completely empty apartments. And we went
ghost
forward.
apartments.
Yes, there's ghost neighborhoods in Jerusalem. I'm sure you've noticed a lot of them.
So let me just stop you here.
I just wanted just 2 sentences on this because I think it's an important issue for a lot of people. It might be the most important issue. And what we did there was be able to put in, again, a series of carrots and sticks, if you will, to be able to make sure that there's an incentive for people to rent it out during the time that they're not there. A lot of times people are just looking for a place for 6 months. So what you need to go ahead and do is take some of the stuff as the one that I mentioned, which is something that really has shown to bring down the rental prices, continue with these programs, but on the macro level, you got to reform the land authority. You have to just build more than we're doing now. Supply and demand is not just, something in a textbook. It's real. I've seen this in the committee. I've seen the numbers from year to year. When we build more, the prices do drop.
Okay.
That's what we have to do.
All right, let's go quickly now. Okay,
Sure.
Because I want to ask a lot of questions. We ain't got that
Hey,
much
I'm here.
time.
You're the one who said I only
Okay.
have a half hour.
I know you are good. This guy is good. Like honestly, I don't know. We could do a poll after, but he is a great speaker. You may disagree with some of his politics, but man, this guy's a good speaker. Okay.
It helps being in government.
How do you feel? What
him
is
to come
Yamina policy on marijuana? Like,
Wow. So I have to say, this campaign, that's the first time someone asked. I'll be honest, the first campaign,
thank
that's
you,
what,
Karen, for asking that question.
That's in the first campaign. That was every single event we did, practically. Maybe not everyone, but just about everyone. They asked about that. So I can tell you what our position was on the first one. That's something that does not appear in our platform, so I can't give you an official Yamina answer to that. But what I can tell you is back when we were just Yamina Chadash, so the answer that we gave them was that we were going to look at various studies and see what the consensus would be in terms of what.
But even conservatives get stoned. Come on now. No, I'm joking. I am one of the people. I am one of the people on medical marijuana. I have.
That's totally legal.
It took me 2 years to get.
I'm sure you have a lot of friends. I found that.
No, everyone's trying to be my friend.
I have a lot of friends.
But I work with KeepOlim 14 hours a day. I don't see anybody. They all knock on my door. I'm like, I'm not home. Go away.
Well,
so no, but it was very hard. I was very sick. It was very, very hard. It took me 2 years to get. I was addicted to opiates.
Mm-hmm.
I almost died from the opiates. We've had a lot of Olim, sadly, pass because of drug abuse on the opiates. They passed them out like candy. I came here as an Oleh, and a year later, I was addicted to opiates that the doctors gave me. I didn't find them in the street. I got them from my doctors. I went from a 100-kilo bodybuilder to 69 kilos. I couldn't get out of bed. I started KeepOlim from my bed. So I very sympathize with all my other people. We have cancer patients who are supposed to get 100 grams, and they jacked up the price under the reform. And there's no way they could pay 3,000 shekels a month for this stuff. They only make 8,000 shekels. So we have a huge problem in Israel with the cannabis industry. So thank you, Karen, for asking that question.
I can give you one quick sentence on that. When Ayelet Shaked was Justice Minister, she, along with Gilad Ardan, did work to decriminalize. That doesn't make it legal, but she was one of the two ministers they were pushing to decriminalize it, which of course is
I have another question.
a step there.
Okay, now you're young. You're a young man.
Thank you.
But this question
feels
is
good
on
when I hear that.
ageism,
Yeah.
and a lot of Olim, especially the older Olim like me, who come here past the age of 40 or 50 or 60, and they can't find a job. Why can't they find a job? Because nobody wants to hire them. And I tell, as you know, I'm supposed to be a maven on Olim issues, so I tell them, start your own business, because the government gives you help. They have ma'of.
Wow.
They have. I tell them, start your own business, because that's the only way
You
you're
need
going
money
to
to start a business. I mean,
Yeah,
I
but-
can tell you my story is starting a business, and I started along with my partner David Kalimnik, the first comedy club in Jerusalem, which was also the first English comedy club
I
in
appeared
Israel.
there once. It was my 4th comedy show.
Wow.
I did there. And I got yelled at by your partner because he said, I'm known to be a dirty comic. And they're like, you cannot curse. You can't say darn. You can't say anything. You can't say heck. You can't say anything. And I did it without cursing.
Yeah, he
know?
has those rules till today. He has a new club now, and he still has those rules. But we had a club for 10 years, and I'll tell you, I remember going in and they were practically laughing at us because they're like, "Who are these two American guys who think that they can start a business?" The guy told me, I was there at the office, registering it. He said, "Do you know that 70%, it was in Jerusalem, 70% of businesses in Jerusalem close within 3 years?" And he's like, "I'm not going to give you guys 1 year. You guys are going to be back here closing,
And how many years
fighting,
does
trying to
this
figure
now?
out who's going to deal with the debt." 10 years.
Baruch Hashem.
I didn't stay around for all 10 years at the same level I was in the beginning. But I'll tell you, it is very difficult when you have to deal with the city, the police. Alcohol license isn't easy. The fire department. I remember the city. They had this thing. You need to have have to have an air thing, but it can only be from the brand of Venta. And I'm like, why is there a kickback here? Like, I don't understand. It needs to be Venta. And they're like, you have to have a certain number of bathrooms based on the thing.
So
It's amazing.
Okay.
So
Let's wrap this up because
Okay.
Wait,
we're
one more
running out of
question.
time.
What about going back to opening up their businesses? What about their education plan? What about
Yes.
daycare being so expensive?
So I'll just connect that to education. I can tell you from the Immigration Absorption Committee I'm in, I can't tell you because I didn't do a poll on this, but for me, the number one thing that I've seen is that Olim are actually educated. Their
Right.
problem is that their training or their certification is not recognized
Right.
here. And that's stuff that I've tried to promote for some time. There has been movement when it comes to certain countries, not all of the countries. But I think if we're able to go ahead and do that, that's a lot easier than being able to train everyone else. There are some issues. The Ethiopians, which are a community that's used to agricultural work, it's a lot more difficult for them within Israeli society. Again, it really depends where you come from, also where you're living. But to connect that to daycare also, if we look at the fact that today public school starts at the age of 3, when I moved here was 5. I can tell you as a father of 3 kids, it's helpful that it starts at 3. I know there are a lot of people that want to go ahead and make it start earlier, perhaps already at 6 months. There are a lot of proposals out there, but to do that we have to pay for it, and to be able to pay for it, we need a functioning government. So I would say my pitch, is try to pick good people, and please don't vote for these parties that are not passing the threshold. Please don't vote. Don't throw your vote away, with these parties that are protesting. Because if you have a protest vote in a 3rd election, you're going to be responsible for sending us back to a 4th election. And the last thing I'll say on that is, please vote. I know a lot of people are saying, I don't want to vote. Obviously I want you to vote for Yamina. That's why I'm here. But you guys need to vote, because if you don't vote, we're just going to be in a very bad place. We need to show that our Israeli democracy is strong, that really whatever comes out, and it's going to be a mess of what comes out of this third election, but that it has a legitimate backbone that we can say that a good, substantial amount of Israelis have come out to vote. So it's very important that you guys go out and do so. But of course, I prefer that you vote Yamina, Tet Bet, and if you want to ask anything, if you didn't get your answer,
What's your website?
So I mean, I told you what my website was before, but I'm going to give you an email which you can directly send me questions at, and that is newyaminanglos@gmail.com. That's again, newyaminanglos@gmail.com. Please send me your questions, and I want to thank you guys for listening to me and tuning in. And I'm sure thanks to all the other candidates that I didn't see, but I'm sure everyone did a good job. I know a lot of the names were going around. We're usually doing panels. This is cool to do a one-on-one interview. It's a little bit different than what we're doing.
Well, we try to be a little different.
Hopefully, we won't be doing this a fourth time. That's
Amen.
I think what the main
Amen
thing
to
is
that.
people feel.
So thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
Jeremy. Coming up is Sharon Haskell, the Kud Knesset member. Let's take a picture.
Sure.
Stand up. Thank you
Thanks.
very much, Mr. Jeremy.
Sure.
Take care,
Pleasure,
buddy.
man.
Pleasure meeting you.
Good stuff.
I heard a lot about you, talked to you, and now I meet the man. So I'm
It's
very
my
happy.
pleasure to meet you. I've
Thank
heard
you.
a lot of good stuff about you as well.
Hi, shalom.
Hi.
Welcome to